We will finally see what they found on Matt Gaetz. Trump keeps digging deeper into the mud to stalk his administration. Free speech is under assault as Trump and his allies widen their attacks on media and critics even before taking office. We're about to have an administration with a combined net worth of $460 billion, and the rich keep getting richer. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who vote for progress in every election and want to convince their conservative friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54. Ravi is offline right now, so I'm joined by our friend and my fellow Army veteran, Fred Wellman, the host of On Democracy with FP Wellman, right here on Friday nights on the MeidasTouch Network, and his new show, On Democracy Sunday, on his Democracy channel. So, Fred, welcome.
Good to be back, man. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. Tell us what's going on.
Man, well, the big news today, the earthquake, of course, is that the surprise announcement that the ethics panel actually voted a month ago, apparently, to release the Matt Gaetz ethics report. I think we have a clip on that. Let's check that out.
CNN has confirmed that a House panel took a secret vote to release the ethics report on former Congressman Matt Gaetz. You'll remember that investigation looked into allegations of sexual misconduct, drug use, and possible bribes. It is now set to be made public, this investigation, soon.
We are told that this report is expected to be made public once this session of Congress ends and lawmakers leave Washington to return home for the holidays. But I think the timing of this is very notable. We know that when the committee first voted last month not to release this report, Matt Gaetz was still Donald Trump's pick to be his attorney general. Since then, he has withdrawn his name from consideration. He has also made clear that he has no plans to return to Congress next year, and has also said that he is planning to join One America News Network to be an anchor for them in January. Now, just to get a little bit into this report, the Ethics Committee has been working on this report and investigating Gaetz's alleged conduct for about a year now. Here's some of what they've been investigating: whether he engaged in sexual misconduct, whether he used illicit drugs, and also whether he shared inappropriate images or videos on the House floor, misused state identification records, converted campaign funds to personal use, accepted a bribe, had improper gratuity or impermissible gifts. And that is according to an announcement from the panel while they were investigating this. So again, this is a reversal for them. We had no idea after they had initially voted whether they were ultimately going to vote on whether to release this report. We now know that they voted secretly to do so.
So Manu, it's rare, it's not unheard of, but it's rare for a report on a lawmaker by the Ethics Committee to come out after the lawmaker is no longer in the House. Even more rare to do it over the objections of the Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson didn't want this. So what happened here?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, that's what Mike Johnson cited. He said that, yes, there is precedent for releasing this ethics report, but he said it was bad precedent. That was his argument in trying to shelve this report while Matt Gaetz was considered as the Attorney General nominee. There have been a couple of instances. There was one in the House back in 1987 where that occurred. Also one in the Senate Ethics Committee back in 2011. Then Senator John Ensign had resigned. It was released after the fact. But the argument was a lot of members believe that Matt Gaetz ultimately decided to resign, and really abruptly resign, to try to bury this report altogether. And some Republicans believe that they sided with Mike Johnson's belief that they should not move ahead with this report because of that fact. Now, it's also important to note that Gaetz is someone who has maintained frosty relations with Republicans and Democrats alike.
I like that last part, right?
Yeah. Well, to that point, as I was listening to this, here's what I was thinking. One, I think it's pretty clear the timing of his withdrawal of his own nomination, right? It's like, right. I mean, because then you go, okay, well, they're going to release it. They're not releasing it now, but they're going to release it before such time as I would need to be confirmed. So that's not going to happen, right? Because it turns out he did even more stuff than we thought. It also makes me realize there's one of two things happening with Matt Gaetz. One is, as was alluded to at the end of that report by, I think, Manu Raju, is nobody liked the dude. You know, Democrats didn't like him. Republicans who went to his defense, who said they liked him, were doing it because it was like their job. Nobody liked this dude. But then the other possibility, and these are not mutually exclusive, is that while Speaker Johnson was like, it'd be bad precedent. We shouldn't do it, because Trump wanted him to be his nominee. And so it'd be screwing over Trump if he were to side with the committee on releasing it. It's very possible that Johnson was like, look, none of us want this guy to be attorney general. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to say it shouldn't be released. Right. You go ahead and release it. But as far as we never had this conversation, that's actually what I think happened.
Oh, I agree, and the fact that it was a month ago, right? They've been sitting on this fact that I think it's fascinating. And of course, there was rumors that he might try to go for governor of Florida and other things. I've been saying for a while, the thing about Gaetz and some of these others is nobody likes him. Like he burned every possible bridge. So he might have been saved by his party members, but they're like, whatever, throw him to the wolves. So hey, OAN. I mean, he's going.
Is it
not up?
Is it possible, not that I care that much, but is it possible that this report is so damning that he loses that silly job at OAN?
I mean, they've been shown to have standards too, as odd as that is, because they've fired people over there for things, so who knows? It's got to be bad though. I mean,
that standard could be as simple as it is a liability issue. If we're knowingly bringing a guy in who there's been a congressional report about sexual misconduct and all this kind of thing, and then we are exposing him to all these employees, and then down the line, if somebody files a claim for sexual harassment or just a toxic work environment or something like that, if I'm the plaintiff's lawyer on that, I'm like, look, you had a congressional investigation that told you this guy was a liability and you ignored it. That's like, in the legal world, we call that notice. So I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm not a lawyer, but I know things.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
seriously, it's insane, and he's got such a history. I mean, it's not like it's not been documented, and take this guy on your own risk. I mean, it's the same thing we say a lot about these Trump folks, right? And Trump, you wouldn't be able to hire these guys in your company if you were a corporation. Somebody with that kind of a record, it's like they wouldn't be qualified to work at Walmart, no matter a government agency or a news network even. So it's just, it'll be fascinating to see when this is released and see what the blowback is. I don't know when the last vote is. I have no idea when the last vote is. Do you have any idea? I don't.
No, but that's what's so wild about this is what you were just saying is that it really would likely hurt his ability to get employment in the private sector,
the real world.
Right.
Exactly.
But it doesn't mean that he won't run for governor at some point. It doesn't mean that he can't become, a martyr because of the way he was treated, et cetera. And governor of Florida might be a stretch because you still got to win a primary, and they've got a pretty deep bench of Republicans. But you never know, man. I mean, I've always thought that he looked a lot like the villain from the first Incredibles movie. So perhaps he'll go that direction.
This is his villain origin story right here.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. The guy is also monumentally dumb. I think luckily that saves a lot of us pain because he is also pretty stupid. But I think, he's coasted a long time on Daddy's money. He's coasted along on cover from the political side of it. He had somewhat of a group that he hung with, and now that's been blown out. I mean, he's really on his own now. It'll be interesting to see what happens to him because he is, I feel like he's been sort of set loose. And the fact that the Republicans, the ethics committee voted for this tells you that I think the message to him probably, if I was him, would be, you're done, and it'd be lovely to finally see some justice. As someone said in my comments today, when I mentioned the story, he got Cawthorned. I mean,
it is possible to be such an aggressive jerk that your side hates you too. And that's the thing is like in a legislative body or in any work environment, your team tends to appreciate it when you are really out front in fighting against the other team, but they don't appreciate it when you're out front fighting against the other team and you pretend that none of your teammates are there behind you. Like people don't like that. And they tend to, to borrow a term from our former world, they tend to be a little more likely to frag you as a result.
Well, that's it. And don't forget, you're forgetting that it wasn't just him being out front fighting without them. He fought them. And he's the guy that torched McCarthy. He's the guy that led to 13 votes. I mean, he's been a thorn in the side of this specific Congress since literally day one. I mean, from day one, he's been a thorn. And there's nothing. I mean, I think that what's the old term? Hoist by your own petard. I think it's Shakespeare. Shakespearean. He is being hoisted by his own. This. He made his bed. Now he's going to lay it. You could lay them all. I got all that. Look, I'm a grandpa, so I got all these. I got them all. I got to wrap them out. So, but it does go to what else is going. I mean, he was supposed to be AG. It failed, and I've been using that as an example, Jason, of that our pressure still. A lot of our viewers are kind of despondent right now. We'll talk about the end, but what can we do? I still say public pressure works because he did drop out, and we've got others coming. I mean, what a week it's been for his cabinet nominees, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, and this is a good argument for the idea that the traditional way of creating pressure doesn't always work, right, anymore. I mean, the mainstream media is so dispersed now, and you can get a bombshell report by CNN about something, but that's not necessarily going to move the needle because so many people are skeptical of anything that comes from mainstream legacy media. But when you have certain things that cut across, either because people care about them or because people understand them, like the crap Matt Gaetz did, or like just stuff that's so clearly skeezy, then what happens is that can catch on across the rest of it, right? I mean, at some point that becomes something where Rogan's probably not going to talk about it because I don't think he cares about this, but that universe, right? This is the kind of stuff where, like, if Gaetz were to continue on with the nomination and they're having hearings and they're talking about this stuff, no one's going to ignore that. Everyone's going to talk about it. And that's the point of, like, and they're going to find out about it because the pressure that's created to get it into mainstream media, that's how they find out about it. So it does still matter in many cases.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it also causes a mass effect, right? Where, okay, let's pay attention to all of them because there are, I mean, they've got, I don't know if you heard, they announced Pete Hegseth's going to have his hearing on, I think, January 17th, they announced for Hegseth. So there's more to come, that's for sure. Yeah, January 17th, Senator Wicker announced the Senate Armed Services Committee is going to have a hearing on Hegseth's confirmation on January 17th.
Yeah. And so, all right, let's talk about Hegseth now. So
and they're still struggling. Obviously, that it was a rough week. Did you see the story about his bodyguard?
Yeah, that's what I saw the headline. I haven't read that much about it. Tell me about it.
So this gentleman there you see on the left of your screen is a former Green Beret. He named Hassenbein, Sergeant Hassenbein, John Jacob Hassenbein. You'll appreciate this because you're a combat veteran like me, and you are very close to our partners. He was court-martialed in the Army because during a training exercise stateside, they had actual Iraqi natives serving as role players. So if you guys understand the military, when we do training exercises, they actually have like people who act as local civilians. We have to like discern who they are. So he was supposed to capture this local civilian and treat him as an insurgent. And he did. He beat the crap out of this guy as the allegations. Literally left the guy, punched the guy in the face, threw him up against a wall, left him bleeding. When authorities arrived for the training exercise, they found this Iraqi, who's now an American, on the ground bleeding. The Army court-martialed him, charged him with assault, the beating. He actually was convicted by a military jury of assault in 2020, but the judge overseeing the case declared a mistrial after learning that a friend of Hassenbein, the Green Beret, had been talking to a juror throughout the trial. So he threw the case out, and the Army decided not to retry the case. So he actually has been convicted by a court-martial, but had it thrown out. Since he got out of the Army, he served in with, I thought it was interesting in the story, they say several security company jobs. So he's got, and now he's been hired, interesting. He's had several jobs, since 2020. Not that I'm not one too, but he is just yet another kind of, that Hegseth loves war criminals. He loves, and of course, when asked about it, his attorney Parlator is like, just an example of how the Army unfairly treats our warriors and change. It's the guy was convicted by a jury of his peers.
Also, like, the dude needs some help if he's beating role players in it. Like, I'm just saying, like, get some help, dude. Like, clearly, he was. I mean,
like 7 combat tours. I mean, he's not like he went over a lot,
Yeah. And I mean, like, in the most generous interpretation of this, the assumption would be he was triggered to a point of not having the ability to control himself. But it also means, like, if this happened this way in actual combat, still not okay. Like if you captured the dude and then you're beating him, that would still not be okay. But in this case, it is a dude who came to America and chose to spend his time helping American special forces prepare for their deployments.
Yep.
And then he beat that guy. So that, and this is Hegseth, who left the military because he was called out for tattoos that were, and then so he couldn't serve at the Capitol after January 6th because his tattoos were such that they were concerned about it being linked to, nationalist and white supremacist groups and militias and such. So quite a pair these fellas are.
And it's just the whole list of things with Hegseth. And it's interesting you said earlier about how they can write things off as the liberal press, and that apparently is the framing they're trying to use on Capitol Hill with all the stories. The story of a rape allegation that was buried with an NDA and a settlement. The story of sexual harassment at his work. The story of being fired from two veterans organizations, Veterans for Freedom and Concerned Veterans of America. A report came out that he had been fired, and again, NDAs and payoffs, all these stories. And this, and then let's not even start talking about the drinking, which MeidasTouch has been covering,
Well, Fred, you and I have both, founded, worked at political action committees, which is what those veterans organizations were that he was at.
Yeah. They weren't VSOs.
So it's a good point. They're not veteran service organizations or veteran serving organizations. They're not places that go help veterans. They're political advocacy groups. For you to get fired from one of those and from two of them, like, you have to behave pretty horribly. Like, this is not corporate America. This is this is political action committees where there is a lot of forgiveness for people's behavior frequently. And so because it's sort of a nebulous world in a way, so that's pretty
rough and tumble.
Terrible.
It's a rough and tumble world, we'll call it.
Yes, and so the idea that this dude is going to be in charge of, say, anything, let alone the most. I mean, everybody said it. The largest bureaucracy in the history of all that. I just am pissed. I don't want the guy in charge of the army that you and I care about. Let alone the other branches.
I got kids still serving, that's the thing, so it's like, it's just terrifying. And when we've had the issues, we've had the military accusations, continued accusation of sexual assault that's going unchecked, continued accusations of bias, continued accusations of racism, bigotry. I mean, you don't want somebody who literally represents that. And that's before we talk about the waving off of war crimes and clear criminal activity in violation of the UCMJ. I mean, the idea that the person who's at the top of the chain of command, if you will, thinking the Uniform Code of Military Justice is, a guideline. It's just, it's terrifying to me.
We literally went through a whole thing about 10 years ago, led by Claire McCaskill, to make it so that, commanders could no longer waive UCMJ convictions for sexual assault. That was a thing. That was a whole thing in the military for a very long time.
It was a huge battle.
Giant
battle.
For those who don't know, for a very long time in the history of our military, if you were convicted by a court-martial of sexual assault or rape, that verdict could be vacated by the commander at your post. And we finally have moved past that. And now we are going to put an accused, sexual assaulter, I don't know if that's a term, in charge of the whole damn military.
Yeah.
Like that seems like a real step backwards in that.
Right, exactly. It's all this progress being made. And for me, you're still involved in veterans. You're VCP. I obviously I'm working with vote vets. I'm not even going to lie to you. I'm not exaggerating. I say the outright panic and fear I've been reached out to, fellow veterans, female veterans, especially women veterans, especially veterans who are gay, veterans who are transgender, who are serving. They have reached out to me literally in a panic. I mean, it's very difficult for me to talk to some of my peers right now who are just absolutely struggling with the idea that all the progress they made will be undone by Trump, but then a nominee who's so violently he's literally written books about how much he's against women serving in combat roles. Yeah. He's written books about how there needs to be a Christian cleaning out of the military. I mean, he said what he's gonna do. It's a little bit terrifying. And that's the funny part too, Jason, right? It's like they want to write it off like it's the liberal media or these pundits like you and me who just hate me. He wrote a effing book and he said what he's gonna do, It's like
Well,
I don't know, man.
Here's for people listening, when you're going to talk about this, like at Christmas or whatever, with I think, because it's going to come up, with relatives. What I think is important to emphasize here is it is not, to me, it is not really, obviously his political views are something we vehemently disagree with. But to me, what is even way before that offensive is that somebody who is so overtly political would be in charge of the Pentagon, be in charge of the entire United States defense.
Yeah.
When I think a lot of the veterans who are offended by it are not just offended because of the guy's views. I mean, obviously, if you're in the military and you're transgender, which is not very many people, but if you are, or if you're in the military and you're gay, you're in the military, you're a woman, any of those things, that you have very specific reasons to be concerned about it. But at the end of the day, one of the great things about the military is, and in this country at least, is that it's not political, and that we don't have Republican generals and Democratic generals. We don't have them in this country. That's not a thing we have. And even when we have had secretaries of defense that have come from a partisan background, for one thing, frequently they have been the opposite party of the president who chooses them for that specific reason. But, that's, I think, wasn't Hagel chosen by Obama for that reason, stuff like that. So Gates, after that served for Obama. And so, imagine if you're listening to this and you want to make this argument to somebody, I would tell them, sum it up in your mind, because most people have had one of these. Sum it up in your mind, a toxic work environment that you've been in your life. And it's terrible because you're like, I got to go to this job every day. It's a terrible experience. Now imagine for a moment that you're not a civilian. You're not like, oh, I can just, like jobs are hard to come by. So it's not so easy as to say you could just leave, but you are free to leave that workplace. I have had at least one, and you've probably had them. Your Army career was longer than mine. Toxic environments in a unit or two that I was in. And it is a truly awful experience because it's not like you can just be like, I'm not coming into work tomorrow, or I'm going to go look for another job. Like, that is your job until someone says to you, you're being moved to this other job. And if you go to a superior and say, this is a toxic environment, I'd like to be moved to a different unit, that can hurt your career. Now imagine the toxic environment is being created by the boss's 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 boss. That's why so many veterans and active duty troops are so concerned. And if this guy were super duper liberal and agreed with you and me on everything, and then wanted to make the Pentagon a social experiment place where if you are a conservative, he's going to create a toxic environment for you, I would be equally against that for that same reason.
Yeah. And one thing I put out a lot too, especially for our viewers who don't promote the military, one of the things we know about the military is the price you pay for these decisions isn't seen necessarily just today. I served in the early, much older than Jason. Let me make it very clear. Where Jason has toddlers, I have grandchildren, they're toddlers. But I served in the early, I joined the Army in the early 80s or late 80s and 90s. And I was part of the early drawdown after the Cold War. And so many guys were encouraged. At one point, they were kicking majors out, which is a mid-career person, 10, 13 years of service. And they literally said, we don't care about quality. We just need to get rid of a bunch of people. And those are the future generals. It takes 30 to 40 years to make a general, if you will. You don't just make a guy a general. So it's a 20, 30-year career. So if we make decisions now that politicize the military and force young officers or even non-commissioned officers or soldiers, young soldiers say, look, I don't want anything to do with this kind of politics stuff. I don't want anything to do with this toxicity. I leave now. You're losing future generals, and you'll pay a price for that. There was a period in the late 2000s, the aughts, where we had like 20 or 30 generals, upwards of 100, get forced out of the military in a varying ways, from having affairs, embezzling money, inappropriate use of government funds, all kinds of things. And I used to say to my peers then, it's like, you know why? 1993, when we had the early drawdown and so many guys took the money and ran, they were offering $70,000 a guys to leave. So when I say all that, because, and you know this, Jason, yourself, is the things we do now had this long tail of national security issues 20 years from now. You're hurting tomorrow's generals today, which is why so many of us have served are like just pulling our hair out, because like, you guys don't understand, it's not just about fighting wars in this term of this president. It's fighting wars for the president who is probably about 20 years old right now.
And senior non-commissioned officers, basically your best people, regardless, they may be very conservative politically, it doesn't matter, but your best people don't join the military because they like politics. Men and women, the best soldiers, officers, either one, they join the military because they want to do something for their country irrespective of politics. And making our DOD political is a great way to weaken our military and our national security.
I agree. And it's just the first one. I mean, transition to other these, Tulsi Gabbard's been nominated. Her nomination is trouble. There's a story now.
Let's do Tulsi Gabbard after this break, because Jeremy's telling us we got to take a break. So we're going to come back.
I got to talk to the boss.
Talk about Tulsi Gabbard right after this.
Sounds good.
Fall needs its own wardrobe full of comfortable and coordinating pieces for a layered look with perspective. You need warmth that's still extra breathable. That's why I'm so happy to introduce our next partner, Rhone. Seasons change. We change. It's time that men's closets change too. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and truly versatile set of products known to man. Rhone has premium pieces to elevate every occasion. We're talking about the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, polos, and blazers, all boosted with functional performance properties. Rhone's signature technical fabrics stretch in every direction, breathe, fight odor and the elements, and effortlessly work everywhere so you can stay calm and collected even when life takes unexpected turns. Treated with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology for more wears between washes, you'll be fresh and clean all day long. Rhone helps me stay looking good no matter the occasion. Whether I'm traveling for work or going out on the town with my wife, Rhone has me covered. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone.com/majority and use promo code majority to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/majority and use code majority. It's time to embody your most confident self. Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk growing kids should never eat. That's why Hiya was created, the pediatrician-approved, super-powered, chewable vitamin. While most children's vitamins are filled with 5 grams of sugar and can contribute to a variety of health issues, Hiya is made with 0 sugar and 0 gummy junk, yet it tastes great and it's perfect for picky eaters, i.e. kids. Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide the full body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste that they love. Formulated with the help of nutritional experts, Hiya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including vitamin D, B12, C, zinc, folate, and many others to help support immunity, energy, brain function, mood, concentration, teeth, bones, and more. It's non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free, allergy-free, gelatin-free, nut-free, and everything else that you can imagine. Hiya is designed for kids of all ages and sent straight to your door so parents have one less thing to worry about. As you know, I'm a father, and I'm always on the lookout for the best possible vitamins for my child to take. I'm so happy that I've come across Hiya Health. The ingredients are amazing, and I don't have to worry about sugar or gummy junk because Hiya Health is made without that stuff and is still able to keep the great taste, which is super important because that's how you get kids to eat it. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/majority. This deal is not available on the regular website. Go to hiyahealth.com/majority and get your kids the full body nourishment that they need to grow into healthy adults. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. My favorite part of the holidays is reconnecting with my family and friends. Nothing's more cozy for me than a small little get-together with the people who mean the most to me. How do you stay cozy during the winter months? For some, wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate or watching a movie with family is the best way to spend the month of December. Therapy is a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. I've personally benefited from therapy in my own life. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, and it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible,
and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/M54 today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/M54.
All right, Fred, let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard.
Great sponsors.
Yes.
Tulsi Gabbard. So Tulsi Gabbard's been nominated to be the Director of National Intelligence. Although she has no intelligence background, she's not an intelligence officer in the Army or was. She's actually, I think she was aviator, for God's sake. Anyway, she was
MP.
MP, that's it. Yeah, she was MP in Hawaii in the Hawaii National Guard. Well, her nomination, the rumors are flying. Reuters had a story this week that her nomination is in trouble as well. Shocking to me, actually, they're saying that 8 Republican senators are unsure about supporting the former Democratic member of Congress to be America's top spy. With those sources, they said they have doubts about supporting the former lawmaker because she was unprepared to answer their tough questions during her first round of meetings just last week, and she can't answer questions about her 2017 meeting to meet then Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who's had a rough month. Her lack of significant intelligence experience.
Like euphemism
It's been a little rough for her buddy, and but good news, he's in Russia.
Ended better. Yeah, ended better than most brutal dictators.
That's a fact. And so he's in Russia now, which is the next issue.
Have you seen any of the photos getting around about that they found the personal family photos of Assad in the palace after they took it? Have you seen any of these?
In his underwear cooking, I think there was one of them.
I saw those, and it just goes to show you that like strong man is not a literal term, because if there were, if I'm not trying to shame, but a little bit, because he was a terrible human. If there were any free weights in the presidential palace in Damascus, they had nothing to fear from Bashar al-Assad, I will tell you. So, okay, continue, please.
Good point. And of course, the last thing is her being soft on Russia has fueled a lot of concern. So the story just came out, and there's other story. I'm not going to get into this stuff. If you know her background in Hawaii, she was involved in an organization called the Science of Identity Foundation, which has been sort of called a Hindu-ish cult, which we won't get into here because they're suing everybody. But there's a lot of questions about Tulsi Gabbard's background, and so she's in trouble, and so is RFK Jr. I mean, these nominees just keep, it's just like one after another of issues, and it'll be interesting to see how many slip through.
Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard for a second, because I remember, back in the old long ago days of 2017, 2018, when there was a whole crew of us on the left side who were, circling the run for president sort of chair to sit in, and I was one of those people. I was not. Yeah, that's all right. I ended up getting to know a lot of people who are in that crowd. That's why I am friends. Well, I'm not going to go. It sounds like name dropping, so I'm not going to go through it. But it's not that weird, right? I mean, it's sort of like it's like all the television anchors in your town, the local TV, they all know each other because they're in the same line of work. The school district, presidents or superintendents, they know each other. If you're a Democrat and you're one of the people who's getting ready to run for president, you meet the other people. You meet them in green rooms and at events and stuff like that. And so I did meet Tulsi Gabbard, and then we ended up on the phone for like a half-hour conversation once. And I remember it being like, because at this time we didn't know. At this time she was sort of like an anti-war and seen as a liberal in the party, because she was very anti like wars where Obama was prosecuting those wars. And I remember having a conversation with her where she brought up people we knew in common, and she started bringing up really, really far right-wing Republican members of Congress from Missouri. And she was telling me how they're her closest friends in Congress. And I just remember it being like, and I remember at the time thinking, okay, so she's trying to be pretty bipartisan, but just the way she talked about it, I was like, it sounds somewhere beyond bipartisan. And I guess my point is, I think she was kind of always this person. If you look at her background in Hawaii that you sort of alluded to. Anyway, my point here is really circling around to why people are concerned about the no background in intelligence, because this is another thing our viewers are gonna maybe talk about with folks, is that look, I'm not trying to take anything away from her service. She is, I believe, a lieutenant colonel, and I think came up through military police. I don't know if she's still in the MPs or if she's some other billet now, but actually, I even knew somebody who had her in their chain of command, and who told me that she was actually like, he thought that she did a really good job. So like, she may be good at being an officer. I have no idea. However, it does matter if she were being appointed to some lower level National Security Council position, or deputy director at NSA, then I would have real concerns about her views on Syria, on Assad, that kind of thing. But I wouldn't be like, she has no national intelligence background, because I'd say, okay, she'll get it there. But if you've never been in a position where you needed a top secret, SCI clearance at all, if you didn't serve on committees where you were really in the midst of that in Congress or anything, then you don't know how to evaluate intelligence. And if you are a person who is very likely to give our intelligence because you don't believe our national intelligence assets and what they say, to give it to Russia, well, now the Five Eyes, as we call them, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Great Britain, and the United States, they can't share intelligence with us. And for those who don't know, like, the intelligence assets of those nations are basically our intelligence assets. What they get comes in a very straight line to us. Most of it is shared across them. And that's not going to happen if she's our director of national intelligence.
They're probably already nervous as it is, because amongst the documents at Mar-a-Lago were Five Eyes documents. I mean, there's photos of them, so I'm sure they're anxious as it is. And then to give it to someone who's got ties to a ruthless dictator, cannot explain why she went to visit him secretly, has been more than open about her support for Putin and her against Ukraine. I mean, I imagine our allies are nervous as it is, and this ain't helping.
Yeah. So I would just say, as a former Army intelligence officer, I am very concerned about the idea of her not just being in charge of our intelligence, having access to our intelligence,
being near it. Right?
I find deeply concerning, and I am very hopeful that this nomination will not succeed. And I think at the end of the day, what may cost her, ironically, is that she is going to need the support of a lot of Republican senators, and she just doesn't have the long-held relationships with them because she was a Democrat. If she had been a long time Republican member of Congress, I think maybe give her the benefit of the doubt, So anyway, on to the next terrible.
There's rules you don't. I mean, it just doesn't it never made sense as a nomination in the first place. And like you said, the anxiousness is real. I was really gratified, because I was nervous about that one myself, and I'm gratified to hear that a lot of Republicans may stand their ground and end it before. Kill it before it's born. But my God, it's scary, and it's just one of our. I mean, we can go on. I mean, you've got RFK Jr. now. There are concerns about RFK Jr. because of his conspiracy theories, but lawmakers on both sides of Eric are raising questions about his stance on abortion, his interest in challenging industrial agriculture. Then we found out this week. We saw the story. This is crazy, that his lawyer that he's using for all this said it has been lobbying to get rid of the polio vaccine. Okay, I mean. Yeah, it's like, okay, which has led to the great memes you've seen all week. It's like, I can't lower your grocery bills, but I can bring back polio. It's like,
Robbie talked about this a little last week, that there is politically, strictly, if you're wanting to win an election, there is a political upside to taking a parliamentary approach and bringing people in who largely don't agree with you, but agree with you on a little bit, which is what Trump did. Very transactional sort of thing. He said, okay, RFK Jr., RFK Jr., we should remember, began as an environmental activist, and then he found his way into all this other stuff. And I've said here before that for as much villainizing of him as is possible to do with his stances on vaccines and that kind of thing, I try to allow some space, like in my head and heart, for the idea that this is a person who was born into tragedy, losing, an uncle and a father to assassination. And it is not surprising to me that a person like that has tried to explain the world to themselves as they got older through a belief in conspiracy theories. Like, I'm not excusing it in terms of saying so he can be in government. I'm just saying I feel like a little bit of empathy for the guy as a result. I don't want him anywhere near power. But my point is, he came into the political world as an activist on the environmental stuff. and then found his way into like food and medicine. And he's got some pretty wild ideas about that stuff. But he also has this other stuff that's baked in that I bet a lot of, as you try and actually get him confirmed, I think it's an issue because, yes, he was helpful in delivering the election, and you try and do this parliamentary build a coalition thing. But then if you want him to actually run health and human services, you've got the wild-eyed stuff that some of the Republicans are for. But then on the other hand, you've got stuff like his belief in environmental activism. You've got his stuff about stuff like high fructose corn syrup that the corn growers are not going to like. And so it's a real needle they have to thread. And I think it's going to
Well, that's it. And he's offended so many constituencies. That's the thing. It's like, and they're Republican constituencies as much as Democrat constituencies. I think that's what's interesting about that story is the way they layered that story is both sides are nervous because there's some really, I mean, again, agricultural, everybody from California to upstate New York's got agricultural issues in their districts, in their Senate, in their states. It's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. And I think that's what's interesting too, is I think everyone like the normies like us assumed the issue with him would be the conspiracy theories. The issue with him would be the nutty shit, like a bear, a dead bear. But in the end, it may just be traditional politics that kills him, right? Just the idea that if I put this guy in office and he takes on farmers or big pharma or big farm, if you will, and others, that's gonna torch their electoral chances. So it's funny. We're both advocates, but sometimes I forget I'm also a political operative, and then that matters as much, if not more, to a lot of these guys. They look. It's funny how many on our side are like, "Oh, there's never going to be an election. It's done. There's no more elections." There's going to be elections, and there's going to be elections because they're all so freaking nervous up in Washington because they know they're going to have to run for re-election at some point.
And you want to know who one of the people they're going to have to run against is? RFK Jr., who probably figures, okay, I'm going to be a cabinet secretary in a Republican administration, and then there's going to be a primary to succeed this one-term president, and he's probably going, I'm just going to run in the Republican primary this time around, or I'm going to run as an independent again and have a much larger platform. So I think they're right to be concerned. All right, so with that, we were going to talk about him, Trump sending Kimberly Guilfoyle as far away as he can send her to Greece, and then Herschel Walker to the Bahamas where he can do no real damage. I actually support that one. Send Herschel Walker to the Bahamas. Give the guy a break. Like, that's fine with me. But we'll come back in a minute, and we're going to talk about all these billionaires in this administration and the assault on free speech and what that means for the rest of humanity. All right, right after this ad.
Golden Nugget Online Casino invites you to turn the cold gold. Transform your winter moments into winning ones with all your favorite slots like Icy Wilds and more, plus other casino games. And now you can enjoy special seasonal rewards all winter long. Whether you're spinning reels or doubling down, make this a season to celebrate. New players use code MAJORITY and have your first deposit matched up to $1,000 in casino bonus funds. Just opt in and make a minimum deposit of just $5 or more today on Golden Nugget Online Casino and complete the playthrough requirement. Make any moment golden. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Please play responsibly. 21 plus, physically present in Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia only. Void in Ontario. One per new customer. Receive deposit match on first deposit after opt-in up to $1,000 in non-withdrawable casino bonus funds that require 10-time playthrough within 7 days at a different contribution rates on select games. Terms at goldennuggetcasino.com/welcome. GiveWell, a nonprofit that researches and recommends giving opportunities, takes the impact of donations seriously. To ensure their recommendations withstand tough scrutiny, GiveWell had their own researchers spend months trying to identify flaws in their past work. They then publish their findings, mistakes and all, for any donors to use for their giving. It's this kind of rigor that can help your donation make a big impact on the world. GiveWell has now spent over 17 years researching charitable organizations and only directs funding to a few of the highest impact opportunities they've found. Over 125,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $2 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests that these donations will save over 200,000 lives. GiveWell wants as many donors as possible to make informed decisions about high-impact giving. You can find all of their research and recommendations on their site for free. You can make tax-deductible donations to their recommended funds or charities, and GiveWell doesn't take a cut. If you've never used GiveWell to donate, you can have your donation matched up to $100 before the end of the year or as long as matching funds last. To claim your match, go to givewell.org and pick podcast and enter Majority 54 at checkout. Make sure they know that you heard about GiveWell from Majority 54 to get your donation matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or find out more.
No one wants to lose his hair, but for men, it's actually very common. And now with Hims, the solution is simple. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions, and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who got their flow back. Hims provides you with convenient and quality access to a range of hair loss treatments that all work, all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Choose from personalized, chewable, oral, spray, and serum treatments to find what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online, so there's no uncomfortable doctor visits. Answer a few questions, and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. And if prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And Hims has hundreds of thousands of treated subscribers, and they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/majority. That's HIMS.com/majority for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/majority. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information.
All right, Fred, tell us about this ABC thing, particularly because it all sort of dovetails into something that you have direct experience with. So tell us what's going on.
So if everybody hasn't heard, if you subscribe to Substack, every one of the Substacks you subscribe to wrote about this week. And that's the settlement that Donald Trump made with ABC and George Stephanopoulos. Now, we've heard a lot about this. If you don't know, it stems from a report that Stephanopoulos did on his show about the E. Jean Carroll verdict. He actually referred in this interview he did with Nancy Mace, of all people, that, essentially saying, how can you support someone who committed or was found liable for rape? Trump sued because he wasn't technically found liable for rape, and then we won't get the details of that. However, he has the day the judge decided they would have to face, Stephanopoulos and Trump would have to face their time to do their whatever. I had my brain cramp. Thank you. Depositions. Yeah. They settled for the whopping sum of $15 million, almost $16 million. And this money will go into an escrow account with his lawyer. Okay. That'll be used for the future Trump library. And what's interesting to me on this court, obviously this is pretty shocking, and a lot of people were shocked. This is after a lot of the media has sort of, as people have been accusing them of bending the knee, if you will, but it does dovetail right into the idea that Trump is trying to intimidate the media and everything. And that was proven because just the day later he had a press conference and he promised to sue more people. He's talking about CBS Bob Woodward for his book 60 Minutes because they were too nice to Kamala Harris. He said they edited her interview to make her look good, and the Pulitzer Prize board of all things. But most at the end of that, he said he's going to sue Ann Seltzer and the Des Moines Register for the poll that said he was losing, and he actually has. He actually is suing them for a poll he didn't like. Okay, I mean,
Well,
so
I mean the reason I think that the reason that the $15 million settlement is so discouraging is because it very much looks like a case that ABC would win. And so it just sort of looks like them. And it's not like ABC doesn't have the money to pay for the attorney's fees. And as expensive as that would be,
Disney.
it ain't going to be,
for God's sake.
Yeah. As expensive as that would be, the attorney's fees are not going to be $15 million. So it very much does at least appear to be an attempt to just make nice with Trump by the heads of by I guess Bob Iger and folks that, I don't know, but anyway, so that's upsetting. But you have some personal experience with this. Please talk about it.
Well, yeah. I'm so I'm being sued. For those who don't know, I'm being sued by Mike Flynn for a small amount, $150 million, just a little bit,
which is like,
and
it's almost half your fortune.
yeah, I know. Exactly. It's shocking to me. I might have to sell some of my gold bars.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's $150 million for a single tweet from just about 3 years ago now. It started a year ago with 3 tweets. They got rid of 2 of them because they're ridiculous. But yeah, this is what they do. Rick Grinnell is suing. He sued Olivia Troy. Kash Patel is threatening to sue Olivia Troy for things she said on TV. I mean, this is the MAGA playbook, is to threaten these lawsuits. Kash Patel as threatening. It's just for me, it's just, and we had a big win this week. For those who didn't know, my case is in federal court. It's been tied to the case for Rick Wilson and MeidasTouch, by the way, that was actually being done in state court in Florida. It was thrown out, and then the appeals court in Florida threw it out again against Flynn, ruled against Flynn pretty harshly. So we're waiting for the final disposition of that case, and then hopefully I'll be done as well. But this is, and look, I've had this thing hanging over my head for a year. And it's come on, it's ludicrous, right? I mean, I'm I'm an old man. I've got my Army retirement. I'm not rich. I know everybody thinks we're glamorous and rich in this business, but we're not. And it's so ludicrously silly, the idea that they want $150 million from me. So you kind of laugh about it, but sure, you think about it as you go on a show like this, where it's our job to talk on camera. You think about what you're saying about someone because you're aware that they're going to help you. And I'll tell you very honestly, I'm very blessed. I've got Mark Said and Brad Moss, who have been my attorneys. They've been great. They're doing it for pro bono, but even with people have to understand, even with pro bono attorneys, it's not free. Because we had to hire an attorney in Florida, we had to hire researchers and paralegals and all those things. You're a lawyer. We're almost to the point of $100,000 already from GoFundMe. We did a GoFundMe. That's on a pro bono case a year into it that has not done anything. We haven't gone to depositions yet. We haven't gone to court, and we're already to the tune of approaching $100,000. That's the real goal, is to shut you up and to drain your bank account, and it works. I'm not gonna lie.
So it's about chilling speech, chilling free speech. And it's important to contextualize this for people to understand. There is a segment on the right that has a very different idea of what the First Amendment means with regard to public figures. And so for a very quick primer on this, for those who have not, sat through a constitutional law course or gone to law school, there is a distinction in the law. I can't, if somebody walks by my house right now and I look out the window and I know their first and last name and I say something that is totally untrue about them, they can sue me and they would probably win, Yep. But if I walk by their house as a public figure and they say something that is totally untrue, in order for me to win that suit, I have to prove either malicious intent or a reckless disregard for the truth, because I am a public figure. And it is sort of sacred in the United States that part of the First Amendment working is that we have to be able to speak freely about the people who are in positions of power or influence in this country. And there is a large movement in the right-leaning legal community. It's not throughout it. It is a small movement, or it's a small pocket, but it is a loud movement. By the way, I have a friend from law school who's genuinely a friend, who is one of the leaders of this movement, and to her credit, comes at it quite honestly. It's not like she's not a Trumper. She just believes this idea.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people like Trump who benefit from this belief, who just believe that the way around the First Amendment is to sue people and use the civil justice system to chill this kind of speech. And we should treat it as what it is, which is an attempt, often, not always, but an attempt. I mean, for instance, my friend has represented, causes that are, that sued other Republicans as a result. So it's, if you're on the legal side, you're apolitical about it potentially. But my point is when right-wing politicians like Trump or Flynn use it, it is an end around the First Amendment, and it's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not, it's ludicrous. It's not going to go. We said from day one, I'm not going to give into this. I've got nothing to lose. I mean, as a friend of mine said, I don't know if we probably can't cuss on a daytime show, but there's nothing more dangerous than a man with 0 assets and 0 Fs.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, whatever, what are you going to take? My dog? I mean, actually, I don't even have a dog anymore. River passed. I'm divorced, retire from the Army, go for it, And for that reason, we've said from day one, thank God for Brad and Mark to say, no, I'm not settling anything. There's no settlement. Because I think they thought I was still with Lincoln Project, to be honest with you, Jason.
Yeah.
Because they met Lincoln, but that's the timing of it's so beautiful is those tweets went out literally 3 weeks after I left the Lincoln Project. So they can't, and then two, I'm not a homeowner. So a lot of times they'll settle for, I don't know if you guys know this, but your home insurance will cover these kind of lawsuits, believe it or not. And they have others they've targeted that their insurance company said, hey, we're settling. Their insurance company says, we don't want this smoke. Here's $250,000. That happened to someone. I won't name them. I don't have that. I'm not a homeowner. So I'm like, bring it. I will pay you $100 a year for the rest of you. So anyway, but again, none of this is about money. None of this is about anything but intimidation and scares. Look, Mike Flynn is never going to sit down for a deposition where I get to ask him where his money comes from.
Right.
Because apparently I cost him $150 million. Well, then I get to find out what did I cost him? I can't wait to find out. Can you show me the contract you lost because of a single tweet? And I'm more than happy to pay that. But that's the thing. It's never going to court, but that's not the point. So
that's not the point. All right. Let's move on to this last item.
We're getting close.
Let's do this. Elon and all these billionaires and what we do on this show is we talk about the way in which you should talk about things with the people in your life. We don't have time to go through this whole segment, but let's go ahead and play this clip from MMA fighter Bryce Mitchell talking about Elon Musk, who is sort of revered in the right-leaning bro culture. So you might think you'd get a different sort of tone from somebody who's an MMA fighter. But let's listen to him because I think it is a good lesson as to a way for us to think about how we might talk about some of these new oligarchs.
I think that time will prove me correct. Time will always reveal someone's true character, and if you put that man in a position of power, his true character will be revealed. And let's just put it this way. He has all the money in this country. He's the wealthiest man in the country, and he wasted on rockets, man. Think about it, dude. He could actually help people with that money, but he don't give a about you. He's got all the money in the world to help you. It'd be a penny to him, and you would never have to work again. He don't give a about you, though. He wants to waste it on rockets and waste it on all these cars that suck. And time will reveal the character of that man. And the more he gets under the spotlight, you can't fake it forever. His character will be revealed, and you mark my words, it will be seen that he is a rat bastard. And, if I had all that money, I would like to think I would help people more than he does.
All right. I think we don't have anything else we need to say about that.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, really, that's it. It's crazy. And now, if you just saw as we were in the break there, I foolishly looked at social media, and Elon is threatening that if Republicans vote for the spending bill that's that they have to pass, they should be voted out. So he's literally threatening Congress members now. It's just.
I think it's a great frame. I think when you talk about any of these people, I think it's good to say to your friends and family, like, if you had that kind of money, what would you spend it on? Would it be the same stuff they spend it on? What does that say about their character? I think that's a great frame. So, all right. With that, you have this piece in the outline here about some good news. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of taking heart. I'm hoping to talk to Andy Kim this week, as a matter of fact. I don't know if you guys are following Andy Kim. He was a congressman, and everybody knows Andy Kim because he's the guy that famously was cleaning up the rotunda after the January 6th events. And he's that good a guy. I've had a chance to get to know him since those events. I've spoken to him a number of times. Andy is now in the Senate along with Adam Schiff because both of them are replacing senators that had resigned. Andy had a beautiful post out. I don't think we got to grab a clip of it, but talking about how he opened the drawer and the desk you use in the Senate. It's a tradition that the senators, before you write their name in the drawer, and he's got a great one. And it's just wonderful. It gave me heart, honestly, Jason, to see men of service join the Senate. And it's going to be a tough couple, 2 or hopefully just 2, but 4 years. And to see men who actually care about their service. You see here that there's Andy Kim and Adam Schiff being sworn in the other day. I don't know, that gives me hope, I guess.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity. I don't know Andy Kim well. I actually met Andy Kim at an arena event, Arena being the organization that Ravi founded. And then I have actually gotten the chance to get to know Adam Schiff pretty well and consider him a good friend. And boy, he is, as he likes to say, he is like a political Rorschach test because he was out front on all the, Trump and Russia and intelligence stuff, to where you know, if he always says, like, if he's walking, you know, down the street in your town, and if somebody is like very aggressively anti-Democrats or whatever, they can't resist saying something to or about Adam Schiff. So he has been put himself out there, but is a really smart guy who I am really glad is in the Senate, and Andy Kim seems great as well. Now, lastly, for Grab an Oar, you have in here, you know, that people are constantly asking about how they can help in this difficult time. Go ahead and tell people how they can help. I think people would love to hear it.
I get asked this so much, and we'll be quick. You know, it's just there is hope. Okay, and that's what I think. A point. I think the Gaetz thing is a perfect example that public pressure still works. So I tell people, look, first of all, 31 states will be having local and statewide elections, not in 2026, y'all. This year, 2025, in Virginia and New Jersey, they've got statewide races for governor, lieutenant governor, AG. Those are very significant places for us to take back. As you know, Glenn Youngkin took Virginia 4 years ago, and it was a big shock to the Biden administration. We could do the same thing to Trump, but 31 states have local elections. Often those are nonpartisan, but that's where you start. So if you want to get involved in sending a message now, that's a great place to start. On top of that, guys like us are involved with veterans groups. You've got VCP, which is a veteran service organization, but I'm of course with VoteVets, which is not. It's a PAC. And if you're passionate about issue, maybe you want to join the ACLU. They need help. Immigration is going to be an issue. Our LGBTQT friends and allies are going to need allies. Okay. So there are places where we can fight, because we know we still have a voice, and we're learning already that public pressure does work on the members of Congress in many ways. And with such a close margin, 53 in the Senate, less than 5 plus 5 in the House, they can't afford to lose any Republicans. So pressure does work. So we are not powerless. I guess I want to tell people, have faith. You do have power. It's going to take a little bit of work, but we do have power. You can put your, as we say here in the show, you can put your oar in the water and row, and it'll make a difference.
Fred, thanks, man, for doing this week. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to do this with you. Thank you to the Meidas Mighty for listening. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.